Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. Now, whether the fine folks at Wizards realize it or not, a system like Arena really needs its budget and free-to-play players. I don't have the statistics, so I can't actually prove it. Wizards, please feel free to release the statistics, prove me wrong, but at any given time I would wager that about half of the player base on a system like Arena is going to fit into that new player experience, budget, or free-to-play grouping, meaning that over half of your active players fall into that grouping. Overall, without that grouping, you really wouldn't have nearly as many players on Arena, and it would be much less popular for those that are actually paying to play. So today I'm going to talk about some of the shortcomings of Arena and ways that we could improve upon those for the budget-based communities, and give them more opportunities for value and more opportunities to potentially spend hard currency on a game they're already playing. Listen up, Wizards, there's some good stuff here and feel free to use it. But before we get into all that, did you know that the majority of YouTube viewers never end up subscribing to channels, even the ones they watch the most? So allow me to take this opportunity to invite you to subscribe to the Planeswalker Stronghold for all your new player, free-to-play, and budget needs. That way, you never miss out on a thing. Now, there is a lot of recent content out there talking about the shortcomings of the MTG Arena economy, how it could certainly be more generous, how it could be more approachable and more transparent. And while I agree that nearly all of those statements are true to some degree, I really think there's a lot of content creators out there talking about it already, and my intention is to just kind of smile and nod on those points and to more appropriately focus on the needs of my community, being the budget, free-to-play, and new player experience players, and talk about some of the shortcomings and opportunities to cater more towards that player base, get them more engaged, and doing more within the environment. But of course, as soon as I say that, I'm going to start off by talking about the one thing in this video that I think would actually benefit non-budget players more than it would budget players. But it is still a really critical possibility and opportunity for budget players, and that, of course, being some sort of scalable wildcard exchange system. There's really no reason in a game like Arena why I can't trade a number of common wildcards for uncommons, trade uncommons for rares, and rares for mythics. I'm not exactly sure what those exchange rates should be, but I think it should be somewhat lower on the common end because those are less frequent wildcards to receive. I think it should probably be based on the number of cards that come in a draft pack, probably 2 times those exchange rates, where the commons would remain at 1 time that exchange rate. And most importantly, and very infrequently talked about, I think there needs to be a single downward exchange. You should be able to trade a mythic wildcard for something like 3 or 4 rares. This would really help budget players by assisting them in building things like land bases into their collection. Because really a single mythic does not do a lot for a person's collection, but trading that single mythic wildcard for a complete playset of Fabled Passages, for instance, would be absolutely invaluable to a budget player, because that playset of Fabled Passages could literally be played in every single deck that they have moving forward, whereas a mythic, you might be able to include it in 1 or 2 decks. Now, next up, I want to talk about the daily deal options that are available on a daily basis to encourage us to log in and play the game to some extent day in and day out every single day of the week. And really, I'm talking about those last three options there on the right hand side of your screen. I really think one of these should be available to support budget players every single day instead of the maybe once a week that we're seeing right now. I think gold really should be offered twice a week, gems once a week, and that leaves 4 days a week where they could offer a discounted pack. And I would like to see them standardize the pricing on this instead of it changing every single time. I know that's them doing some market research, but come on guys, go ahead and make a decision. Set a standard price. And if we are going to offer discounted packs 4 days a week, I really think at least one of those packs every week needs to be from a historic set. And yes, post 27 warnings about the fact that that pack is not playable in standard for the people that are literally here on their first week. But it is a great gateway to support this historic environment and get more budget players engaged there. And until you do that, it's just not going to grow. Next up, I'd like to talk about quick drafts. And for those of you who don't know, the basic way this works is an alternating 2-week schedule. So in your 8 weeks, you have 2 weeks to draft whatever the current standard set is, the most recently released. Then on the next 2 weeks, there is a rotating basis of all of the not most recent standard sets. So for instance, right now you draft Zendikar for 2 weeks, and then you would be able to draft M21. Then you would draft Zendikar for 2 weeks, and then you'd be able to draft Ikoria. The major problem with this is it really gives a disadvantage to budget players, and we all know that quick draft is the fastest way to add cards to your collection from a free-to-play standpoint. The problem here being is that we are not offering enough option within the quick draft. For instance, if I'm trying to build a mutate deck from drafting, which is virtually 100% out of the Ikoria set, I should be able to choose to draft that set in the off weeks. I should not have to wait 3 months between drafts while I'm trying to build this deck. Similar for an adventures deck where you want to draft all of Throne, or something from M21. There's really no reason I should have to wait. I should be able to just click on which option I want to draft, and then once I've selected, then make my payment. This is the sort of artificial scarcity which really puts your budget player community at a disadvantage and really does not generate any additional revenue for you. So just stop it. If we were able to choose, we would probably spend more money to draft more often. In a similar vein, one of the best ways that you could encourage free-to-play and budget players to get into the historic environment and have more of a presence there, which is going to be fundamental for that environment to grow and prosper, would be to offer a quick draft environment of historic sets or multiple historic sets. For instance, being able to draft both sets from Rivals of Ixalan. I don't know what would be the best way to implement this, but I think something like what you're currently doing with Quick Draft overall is much more in line with what should be available for historic. I don't necessarily think we should be able to draft or quick draft a historic set or all of the historic sets at any given time, but being able to do those periodically would be a great boon for the environment. And again, more options and a healthier, more robust historic environment is going to help you convert free-to-play players into budget players and budget players into pay-to-win players, which ultimately I have to assume is your goal as a corporation running a game system like Arena. You want more people paying in, and options create that opportunity. This code for these various quick draft environments already exists. It was offered when these sets were in standard. It's just a matter of periodically re-enabling those sections of code, and there's very little downside of doing this. It is not going to take away from your standard players. Just make it clear that historic is a different format. Really just changing the text on the screen is all you would need to do. Next up, Jumpstart. Why are we not doing this, Wizards? I do not understand why Jumpstart has been dormant as long as it is. This is a great value for standard players by adding more M21 to their collection, and bridges cards into the historic environment for those new players, for those budget players, for those free-to-play players. Not only is it adding cards to their historic environment, but they are targeted for specific deck creations, which is the best way to get budget players interested in historic, is make it very easy for them to build a deck, and hopefully a deck that has some competitive options. Secondly, I would like to see a second Jumpstart game mode. Price it just like you do a quick draft for $750 or $5,000, but give me the ability to pick my first theme from all the available themes. Then your second pack is a pick of 3, just like it is now, but make one of those the same color as my first pick, make a enemy option, and an aligned color option. I would more than happily pay 5,000 gold for that option, because as a budget player I am trying to build specific decks, and taking some of the randomness out is worth the resources. And speaking of resources, I really need Wizards to stop wasting mine. The question I want to pose here is, how many copies of Opt do I need? And the answer is 4. I never need more than 4. So by the next update, please find a way to change the card selection option and start treating different versions of the card the way you do cosmetics. I don't need 5 different copies of Duress. I don't need 5 play sets of Evolving Wilds. Stop wasting my resources here. You could do this as a one-time update in the background through one of the major updates of like when rotation happens. And if you do this one time, you'd never have to do it again. And for all the excess copies of cards, you could issue people wild cards or historic specific ICRs to help boost that historic environment for budget players and make it more approachable. There's really no downside to doing this. And really my suggestion would be to make a short list, for instance, of the top 50 most played commons in historic. And instead of giving wild cards or random ICRs, start filling people's play sets for those individual cards and setting those up as complete play sets that help them build popular decks within historic. Now, with all that having been said, let me take this opportunity to invite you to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd also like to take this opportunity to once again invite Wizards to take any of these suggestions and implement them. I give the ideas to you freely, and I really hope that you will run with them. And until next time, I'll see you in the arena.